So here on the screen before you is a picture of two women. On the left, we see Paquita Williams, who is a New York subway conductor. And on the right, we see Laura Lane, who is a journalist and was a passenger on one of Paquita Williams' run a couple of years ago. And the subway stopped. I mean, the car had stopped, and Laura Lane was so impressed with the way Paquita Williams handled the situation that morning. She decided to interview her, and the two became very good friends. So I'm just going to share a little bit of that interview. I have an audio clip with you. I'm going to share it with you right now.
Hi, my name is Paquita Williams.
My name's Laura Lane. I met Paquita on the subway when we got stopped underground for 2 hours. Are most people nice?
For the most part, yes. For the most part. There's times if the train breaks down, people think that's my fault. Or if there's an increase in the fare, that's because I said, hey, let's increase the fare. But I think back on my mom. I have 3 sisters and 4 brothers, and she had to be patient with all of us. So that's why I'm able to be patient, like the day the train stopped on us.
Yeah, it was like 8 a.m. I was on my way to work.
There was no power, so I walked through the whole train. I walked from front to back because I knew somebody would be nervous. And passengers were saying to me, it's Friday the 13th. I said, well, we're alive. Somebody didn't wake up on Friday the 13th and would have loved to have been on this train. So it's a good day for us.
You really made everybody on that train connect. We all started talking with each other like human beings. And we left the train and somebody was like, let's do this again tomorrow morning, same place, same time. What could have started out as a bad day turned into a good day because of you.
About 20 years ago, I went to the dentist and I was so afraid. And I said to the dentist, please hold my hand. Just let me know you're there. And he said to me, I'm not your date. And that stuck with me. So that's why I do what I do with my passengers. I want you to know that if you need me to hold your hand, I'm there.
So Paquita Williams, on that Friday the 13th morning, was the presence of calm, the presence of compassion. And in being that presence of calm and compassion, she became a bestower of peace to all who were on the subway that morning. Being a peacemaker is the beatitude that we are going to be talking about this morning. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Now, when we look through the lens of the literal interpretation that most of us are familiar with, when we think of a peacemaker, it is someone who can be diplomatic, someone who can be a mediator, who can be a pacifist, so to speak, to pacify, calm the waters. It is someone who can bring about understanding, bring about compromise, and in their very essence, be peace itself, be calm itself, like Paquita did that Friday morning on the subway. Now, as we look at the religious moral code and how sometimes it has been interpreted from that lens, a peacemaker is someone who blesses and prays for those who have hurt them. It is someone who does not seek revenge and turns the other cheek, so to speak. And now, within the Sermon on the Mount, when Jesus speaks of turning the other cheek, if it is to be taken literally, it means to stand there and to let somebody inflict the harm. But again, all of the metaphysical symbolism is to be interpreted about consciousness. It is turning from what we see out there and the chaos, to bring our awareness to turn inward, to center ourselves and to become still. And then from that place, we are guided from wisdom, from that stillness as to what is ours to do. Now, the motivation in the religious moral code context to be that peacemaker is to be called a son of God. It is something that must be earned. Just like a child, if I do and please if I do what my parents want to do, if I please my parents, I will be in good favor with them. And so it is taken in that context, if I obey all of the commandments, if I do not commit a sin, if I am virtuous, I will be in good favor, and then I will earn the right to be called the Son of God or the child of God. Now we know within the spiritual context and the symbolism, to be called a child of God means to be, it is not something that we have to earn. It is the very essence of who we are. It is our birthright. Now, we may not always be acting from our highest place or from our highest potential, but nevertheless, our essence is still intact. Just like on a cloudy day, it doesn't mean that the sun does not still exist. And Eric Butterworth, in Discover the Power Within You, as he speaks of blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God, he speaks of this being called sons of God in this way. Peacemakers are not only called sons of God, that is the result that comes later after you do something. No, the first step is to call yourself children of God, meaning to affirm and know that your essence and potential
are
fine. It is your birthright. Call yourself a child of God and believe it, and you become a true peacemaker. It is not a thing you have to do in the world around you. In the most dramatic way, the world around you will be changed in the twinkling of an eye as you change. An electric light doesn't have to go out into the room and try to sweep away the darkness. When the light is turned on, the light radiates and the darkness disappears. It is not easy. It is not easy. Before I speak to what is not easy, to be this presence of peace, I would like us to look at the line. In the most dramatic way, the world around you will be changed in the twinkling of an eye as you change. It makes it sound like it's magic, poof. What is being referred to here is we are vibrational beings. And several weeks ago, I talked about the torus field. I talked about that everything in our consciousness vibrates, has frequency, and not only impacts or affects our field, our inner selves and the field around us, but it gets amplified and affects the torus fields or the fields around us. And I spoke about when you can have the excitement when you're in a concert or have that mob mentality, the frequency of the collective is active. So knowing that we have that power within us is very empowering. And I want to speak to, it is not easy. So what is not easy? Well, living from our divinity. Many of us know intellectually, and we believe, yes, just like Principle 2, when James read it this morning, I am divine. My essence is divine. I am made out of the substance of God. I am the likeness of God, meaning that I am a creator and that I create through my consciousness, my actions, my words. But knowing that and living from that and not our personality self can be challenging at times, especially when we are faced with conflictual situations and we become triggered. Things happen. Somebody betrays us. There's protests going on. There are people burning buildings. Someone in our family is sick. We are sick. And all of those things in the physical world that we are experiencing as we walk between the worlds can trigger within us fear, worry, and that is all part of the human experience. And so we are not to diss our humanity, but we also know that we are divine and that we have the dominion, the power to choose what will we energize and what we will take our energy away from, what will we not put our focus on. And that is not, again, a very easy thing to do at times. Disengaging from the physical appearance, I think I just spoke about that. Sometimes what is around us is not calm and peaceful. And I've used this example in the past, but it is appropriate when what are the circumstances? Now we all like to meditate and do our prayers in the stillness. Sometimes we like to go by the ocean, sit in our favorite chair, have our favorite candle. And I like to do that, and I will continue to do that. And Carolyn Mace speaks of, can you reach that energy or that center of centeredness and peace even when you don't have those things? When people are yelling or arguing, or there's chaos and conflict that we see as we are in this paradigm shift in our collective experience today. It's also not easy, is giving up the need to be right, to prove that we are right, or evening the score, the tit for tat. And then lastly, embodying peace, understanding love in the midst of chaos, in the midst of challenge. It can be very trying. And all of that does not make sense, again, to our personal mind. And it is not possible if we are centered in personal mind or third dimensional consciousness. So what we are going to need is a shift in consciousness. So before I go to that shifting in consciousness by sharing John 8, chapter 8, verses 4 through 9, as I talk about the mystical shift in consciousness to fourth dimension, just want to give a little bit of an example. I think it was in 2017, August in 2017, when there were protests around removing the statue of Lee in Charlottesville. Protesters, those who were standing for it being removed, us moving more into being aware that how we hold racial injustice. And then there was a group, quote unquote, from the right, or the right white supremacists. And the tensions and the screaming from Jews will not replace us, and the anger and the venom cause fear and anxiety, obviously, to erupt, becoming triggered, the physical appearance of danger, all of that was alive in that circumstance. And there were about a handful of unity ministers who came, and their whole purpose was to be that centering presence, to hold that space. And they spoke about how it was really, how, you know, through deep breathing, and how hard it was not to be triggered. And we do know that a young lady, 32 years old, did lose her life. And I'm just wondering, you know, as we see the protests that are happening now, the peaceful protests are increasing and the violent acts are decreasing. And we know when the energy of two or more are gathered, that the energies of those force fields have that impact. So what is one to do to lift from this third dimensional triggered tit for tat consciousness? I share with you John chapter 8, verses 4 through 9. Teacher, this woman was caught in the very act of committing adultery. Now in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such woman. Now what do you say? They said this to test him, so that they might have some charge to bring against him. Jesus bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, "Let anyone among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." And once again, he bent down and he wrote on the ground. And when they heard it, they went away, one by one, beginning with the elders, and Jesus was then left alone with the woman standing before him. And so we know that we move from the literal interpretation of the events that happened here. Now, there is a historical context, but interpreting this, you know, Jesus spoke through allegory, he spoke through parable, that we are to look about what this means for us in consciousness. So as Jesus was there with the angry crowd who was wanting, there was ill will, there was conflict all around in the situation. There was ill will, thoughts of condemnation against Jesus, because they were threatened about this inner transformational teachings versus the letter of the law. And they were concerned about the letter of law. This woman was an adulterer, so she should be physically stoned. So that whole conflict is about inner conflict and being in a conflictual situation within. And sometimes when we are faced with that conflict, ill will, meaning our choices of our thoughts and our words, are not always energized from our higher place. We can be, you know, judgmental and hard on ourselves, and we can inflict with our words and our thought that ill will on others. So the law of Moses means that third dimensional thinking, the world of duality, right and wrong, an eye for an eye, needing to be right, needing to live by the letter of the law instead of the spiritual essence or truth. And the stoning, you know, although this was a physical act of violence wanting to be inflicted, the metaphysical symbolism of stoning is the acts of violence. And it could be not just something that we do physically when we inflict harm, bodily harm, but it is also the stoning we do in consciousness to ourselves, or committing acts of judgment, shame, blame. Not that none of that is happening today on social media by any means, right? So those, or just even within our family when we gossip, those are all acts of stoning, quote unquote. And then we see Jesus, and it's actually depicted in this picture, where he is writing on the ground. And we know that Jesus studied mysticism and the mystery schools, energy. He was all about the transformation of consciousness, but he knew about energy frequency. And so it is believed that was in the presence of all of this turmoil and tumult, whether it, outside, within, he was doing grounding of the energy, centering of the energy. And when we speak about the crowd went away, the crowd are the thoughts that fill ourselves. And it is the crowd, instead of focusing on what's out here and the crowding of our thoughts of ill will and all of our wounds and hurts and anxiousness and worry, when we ground ourselves, when we go within, when we do that deep breathing, we see that dissipates. That dissipates. And then as it dissipates, we have the opportunity to be alone with the woman. And metaphysically, woman means the potential of love, the potential of divine illumination that emanates from our heart. And when we are in that place of stillness, we have that ability to reach that place of stillness, of love, and to tap into that, where we change the frequency of our beingness. So how do we apply these teachings of John 8 into our lives? How do we make these symbolisms of conflict, the law of Moses, stoning, writing on the ground, the crowd and the woman come to life in our daily lives? So here is the Peacemaker formula. 1, first is to be aware that conflict is a brewing. Many of us can tell, outside, but within, sweaty palms, a racing heart, flushness in our face, and our thoughts become, attack base or shame base, so on and so on. So the first step is that awareness that conflict is brewing and my choices of consciousness and my thoughts are not in line with my higher self or the essence of anybody else's higher self, so to speak. And so what do? We ground our energy. In one way, there's many ways, some of you do tapping, some of you know the box breathing, doing deep breathing. Even if you take that mindfulness meditation and you just do, instead of the long phrases, deep, slow, calm, ease, those are things as you're breathing, if you're on the checkout line or you're in the midst of something, that can be very powerful for you. So that deep breathing, touching your legs. And I remember, when I was head of hospitality many moons ago, and I had to make announcements and my whole body would shake, literally. And many of you know, I couldn't even hold the microphone. And I was working with an energy practitioner, and she had me imagine that my legs were like trunks of the trees. And so I would open my legs and I would ground my energy, and I would visualize that. So grounding the energy, and then consciously choosing to shift from third dimensional duality thinking, which is called that Mosaic law. Right for wrong. I cannot have peace until this happens. Now, it doesn't mean we don't put our energy into making things shift. But when we're no longer coming from Mosaic law, we're not coming from vengeance. We're coming from our power. So it doesn't mean that we're just going to be passive in our lives. It means that when we get that clarity and take action, I'm coming from that place of power, that place of clarity, and not from that anger and venom. And then we seek communion as we're doing that deep breathing within our spiritual hearts. We come before the woman metaphysically, deep breathing. And we commune within our hearts. And then as we allow that, stillness arises. And then we can tap into divine love and illumination, which is guidance. And I share, again, there are very things that we see in big scale collectively that might be hard, to be in the presence of a building burning and bottles being thrown. And then there are things that happen in our own personal lives. And you start practicing where you are in your everyday life. I remember when I was teaching, we used to have drills for an intruder, in case, it's a reality in the world. Well, now schools are not in session, but there have been many school shootings. So along with our fire drill, and if there was a bomb threat, we had to have the drill for the intruder. And I used to teach students. And one day when we had this drill, in my group was a young lady who had Asperger's, a title, and the voice over the intercom, "Go to lockdown. There's an intruder in the building. Go to lockdown." I mean, it's a very unnerving message. And so I would have to get the students over to one corner, and this one young lady started screaming, and she was so frightened. And I just asked her, "Okay, Erica, come on, honey, let's do deep breathing." And I asked everybody, let's all do deep breathing. And I just put my hand on her. And within a couple of, a minute or two, she began to calm down. So I do know that as we practice this, it can have a very profound effect, not only on yourself, but people around you. So to be the peacemaker, to follow those steps, don't they sound familiar? They have been some way or fashion have been discussed within the Beatitudes over the last couple of weeks. We have one more Beatitude, so I thought it would be nice to review these, to know that to be that peacemaker, it's just not something, okay, I'm just going to go out there and start breathing. Yes, that is powerful, but it is a devotion to the way we live every day. It is plugging ourselves in to living from the spirit of the law, the inner world. And so I invite you to live these fully, and to know that as you live these, it leads us to be powerful peacemakers. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Remembering poor in spirit means to be open, to shift from our ego, to shift from our spiritual righteousness, thinking that we know it all and that I'm going to tell everybody how they should spiritually live their life. Being poor in spirit means I am open. I am open to evolve and to listen within. Blessed are they that mourn. We talked about the power of grief, and that we do face physical loss. It is part of the cycle even of evolution. And so therefore we shall not stuff that sadness. We need to allow it to express, to be present to it, not only for ourselves, but as a group, to lament with one another, to be present with one another, to be that healing presence. Just like after George Floyd's death, many of the parents who have lost a loved one through police brutality came to be with the family of George Floyd, knowing that as we lament and we are there for one another, it is powerful. And blessed are they that mourn, who forgives, does that clearing of letting go of all that blocks the clarity of heart. The devotional practice of blessed are the meek, knowing that as I tame or have dominion over my feelings, emotions, thoughts, words, and deeds, I get to choose what I will energize. And as I am able to be comfortable with anger, sadness, worry, and breathe into them, I can tame those energies and energize those that I desire. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. And that hunger and thirst is that desire to live from our spiritual center, to always seek the divine highest calling in every moment. And blessed are the merciful. This is about the Taurus field, knowing that everything that I hold in consciousness, there is an exchange, the law of exchange. What I hold goes out to the field. What is in the field, I experience. All life breathes together. Knowing that is powerful. And then, blessed are the pure in heart. We spoke of last week, is being in communion with the wisdom within our heart, knowing that enlightenment truly takes place within our heart, and every day taking that time to listen to the divine will that is wanting to be illuminated and guided in your life. And from that place, we are led to be peacemakers, where we shift from duality consciousness to desiring to be the presence of stillness, to be the presence of love. Now more than ever, wouldn't you say that we are being called to come from a higher dimension of living? That is what is up before us. That is the paradigm shift, to truly know how to use our power, our inner power, and not our external power to implode and explode with each other. And so I leave you with this powerful quote. The light within you, my friends. You have a powerful, beautiful, healing light within you. It is the perfect light of divine love and cannot be touched by negativity. Negativity, or lower octave, evaporates in the presence. Instead of trying to figure everything out, connect with this beautiful light and watch your soul fill with peace. Peace be with you, my friends. Blessings of love and light to you all.